and welcome to the introductory pupstatus.com injury NFL game analysis channel. I'm going to spend this off-season day explaining a little bit about the interface. Things will change over time as they improve and as I get feedback, but this is the general concept of what I'm working towards. What you're looking at is a matchup between the Rams and the Bills. Bills are on defense, the Rams are on offense. We can switch back and forth here. What I'm trying to display essentially are the impact of particular injuries or statuses of players on their team. I started this because years ago, and still currently, but hopefully less so now that I'm actually studying this on a regular basis, I had no idea what it meant if I heard Tre'Davious White was questionable. I don't know what kind of impact that has on the team. Defense is tough to assume, and the offensive line is tough to assume what actual impact their status would have on their team should they be missing or unable to play. PUP, by the way, and PUP status stands for physically unable to participate, which is a particular status or designation a player might get. Anyway, moving on. So let's say Tre'Davious White is listed as questionable. What I have is this metric, thanks to Pro Football Reference, called the AV score. You can look that up. And it essentially kind of tells you what numerical impact, numbers being higher, being greater, that particular player has on their team, what value. So regardless of how many games they've started, how many snaps they've played, the amount of pay they get, etc., they have a AV value, which kind of determines the true impact of that player being missing. That statistic at the start of the year is based on the year prior, so things change. You'll notice things that you don't agree with, like, for instance, on the Titans, you might see their running back, I'm drawing a blank, but obviously very impactful, went down at the start of the year. And the year prior, he was ranked a 17 in terms of impact, but last year he was only like a 4 or something like that. And you might be like, what? That's crazy. He's huge. And yeah, it's true. Of course, he's amazing. But the Titans did pretty well last year, even without him. So his impact was very minimal. But obviously, that's something you're going to, decide for yourself this season, at least until we catch up with the impact for this season. But I wouldn't honestly use this so much for the impact of your role players or your studs, so to speak. Those are pretty obvious. You know what, Matthew Stafford means to the Rams. At least I hope you do if you're playing fantasy sports. So yeah, again, this is more for like linemen and defense to kind of suss out what kind of impact that particular injury will have. So also the overall strength of each position. So the higher the value, the more strength that particular player has. And I've done a little bit of regression, and teams with higher overall values typically did better during the season than teams without that. You can see their overall strength, the sum of all these values. So the Bills have a strength of 106 on defense. The Rams have an 81 on offense. I think that's because they're actually missing some players this year so far. I feel like they had a better offense than that. But if you switch them, you can see on the offense, the Bills are at a 123, which is huge. And also here are a couple examples of questionable linemen we'll look at in a second. And the Rams are pretty great on defense, and they have a huge defensive end here, and that's Aaron Donald, big impact on his team. So anyway, looking at the charts here, this circle, this kind of representation of just this number here. So these are intrinsically linked here. The 4 meaning almost no strength, a 16, meaning quite a bit in this position. So if we look at their left guard situation, you can see part of it is yellow, and that slice is the percentage of this number that that player is. So they have two players in this position with a relatively significant impact, a 9 and a 5. The 5 being questionable, so the total is 14. Whatever percentage 5 is of 14 is considered questionable. So if you see a lot of red, that's when someone's actually out. There's nobody really out yet. It's preseason. There's not really that kind of report yet. That's bad news. But yellow, is just questionable, and depending on the coach and the team, typically questionable players play, but you want to keep an eye on it. One easy way to do that is over in this news column. I list all the questionable players for each team, respectively for defense or offense, depending on which side of the ball they're on. You can just click this little news icon, and this will take you to the RotoWire, which I like a lot. Gives you some good data, up to date, and I tend to watch this throughout the week. Thankfully, with football, people's statuses don't change crazy last minute all the time. There's a lot of game time decisions, of course, but you kind of have to decide which way to lean regarding those. So that's the general idea of the interface. You get your offense, your defense. You can see the strength at that position represented by this number, how much of that is one particular player, and how much of that impact that player will have should they be injured or unavailable. Down here, the special teams, same principle. We're just missing the ring on the outside there. But typically, these are players that aren't relegated to that exact position. I mean, obviously, place kickers and punters, yes, but holders are typically like both the holder and the punter. And punt returners might be, wide receivers, running backs, anybody. Same with kick returners. So that's your special teams. And this does have a significance. Sometimes you'll see their kicker, like on the Baltimore Ravens, for instance, would have a much higher impact on the outcome of the season. And that would be represented in the number there. So getting back to the interface, you can select games here. You can determine which side of the ball you want each team to be on here. And these are closable, and you can open them here. If you have a large desktop, it's easy to have all of them open, but space is limited, especially on mobile, so you probably want to close these if you're just kind of looking at the graph here to see what's going on. Clicking on a player, again, the news will take you to their RotoWire page. This takes you to their actual ESPN page with more stats. They all have 3 sites or 4 sites I kind of pull from generally. I get my lineup information from Pro Football Guys, just Football Guys. They seem to be very up to date and have some awesome stats. I recommend checking out their site. I get a lot of my data from ESPN. I get my injury data from there. And then if you click through on the actual position, you're going to go to this Pro Football Reference page, which is also pretty amazing detail season after season for each player. This is also where I get the AV statistic, where you can see that person's value. Again, you can close and open these. So this is the injury watch. This is just kind of like the current players with injury designations, their impact, a little news link, their position. You can open that with the little I. I use that because of the term watch. This just toggles on the special teams on and off, and this is the actual matchup. And then if you want to get back to this video we're watching right now, you're just going to click this little question mark right here. So throughout the season, I'll be focusing on certain games, letting you know what news I've heard regarding their impact and maybe what to look out for. So if we just take like a random game here, for instance, not too much going on, maybe a little bit of questionable tag on their strong side. Safety, same on this side of the ball, not too much going on there. But here's an interesting matchup. Okay, here we go. Derrick Henry. That was the name I was looking for earlier. Obviously, this is much less than his general impact. It would, it should be in the high teens, but last year he didn't play that many games. You can see here he started 8 games, so didn't really have that much impact overall, and they did pretty well last year. Actually, I was pulling for him, especially since he had gone down. Anyway, you can just see the Giants aren't necessarily that beefy in terms of their value on defense. They have a very low strength rating. Tennessee Titans, on their end, don't have a very high offensive rating, but I've seen him put up some points, especially with Aaron Brown, which I guess he's not there anymore this year, so that's a huge, you know, gut punch to their offense for sure. But in this matchup, I might look for people on the left side here because they just don't have a lot of depth. On the right side, their strong side linebacker, a little bit of strength, but here's a matchup I might look at and be like, okay, obviously the offense is going to put up some points, or at least be able to put up some, bigger plays against this secondary that's relatively weak compared to, who we're just looking at, like the Bills, for instance. So toggling through these, we'll go through certain games, bigger impacts, with different injuries. And that's kind of it. I'd be happy for any feedback or comments. Let me know if this is something you find valuable, or if you feel there's any features or anything you think would benefit the site and anybody using it. Thank you so much for your time. Hope you have a great